Attention, you're listening to The Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk and education. Be advised, the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. And now, coming to you from the Full Suite Wealth Studios, here's your conservative but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
All right, my friends, Washington is about to dump thousands of new Epstein-related documents into the public square, and while transparency is a good thing, we're also about to be treated to an absolute political circus here, because you know what's about to happen. In fact, it's already kind of happened with an interview with Jasmine Crockett, the leftist lunatic in Texas. She was on CNN with Caitlin Collins, and I've got that clip that I'm going to play later in the program. But this has the recipe for an absolute political circus, and I'll get into that today, my friends, as the program unfolds. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to be part of the conversation, share your thoughts, questions, feedback, always make sure you include the appropriate amounts of adoration and praise. You can send those to todd@toddhuffshow.com. Kidding, my friends, not kidding. Just a little bit kidding. But that's how you can communicate, and it's my pleasure to be here with you today, my friends. Maybe you've reached that stage where managing your money feels more like juggling than it's just simple numbers. You've got things like tax planning, estate work, investment choices, a whole lot more. That's when family office services can really make a difference. Full Suite Wealth brings all those pieces together into one cohesive strategy. Their family office services give you access to a coordinated team, and that team has advanced option strategies, private equity, private credit, legal expertise, all of that under one roof. Jason and his team at Full Suite Wealth will take wonderful care of you, my friends. So this is about simplifying your financial life, planning for the future, making sure your legacy stays strong for generations to come. Are you ready for that next level of support? If so, visit fullsuitewealth.com. That's fullsuitewealth.com. Build your legacy, secure your future. All right, my friends. The House and the Senate have passed the law releasing the Epstein Files. This is the Epstein Files Transparency Act. It passed the House 427-1 unanimously in the U.S. Senate. Trump has signed that bill, and now the Department of Justice has 30 days to release thousands of pages of files of Epstein's files, whatever that means. And we're about to figure out what that means. We're about to be misled about what some of this means. You can guarantee there will be redactions, there will be confusion, there will be speculation, there will be viral misinformation. And I know it might sound like I'm against this. I'm not against this. In my world, I want people who understand what's going on. In my world, and candidly in the world that was, in the minds of our founders when they created and framed this great nation, they wanted people who were engaged, who were informed, who had the ability to think. And the thing is, we don't have that today. And I know, listen, it pains me to say that. I'm not here to just badmouth and to put people down. I'm not naming anybody in particular, but we have a ton of people out there who have abdicated their personal responsibility when it comes to thinking. They tune in to MSNBC or CNN or NBC or ABC or CBS. They read things online in some of these radical places, and they just regurgitate what's being said. I spend some time, not a lot of time, But there's a group of what's called abortion abolitionists. And I will watch some of the conversations and debates these folks have on the streets. And if you don't know, an abortion abolitionist is someone who's not simply pro-life, although they are pro-life, although they'll tell you they're not pro-life because of some of the connotations that come with that as far as where they think the line should be drawn. These are people who believe that abortion is murder. By the way, I agree with this. Abortion is murder. In fact, I would say to you, I'm an abortion abolitionist. But set that aside for a moment. It is remarkable to me when they have conversations with people on the street. They'll hold up signs. They'll go to busy places on the streets, and they'll have a team of camera people that are filming this. He's mic'd up, or the people that are holding the signs are mic'd up, and then they're engaging people in respectful debate. But there's a shock factor, right? They're showing pictures that are sometimes pretty gruesome. But again, if you're bothered by the picture, why are you not bothered by the real thing taking place when the picture was taken? So they'll have these conversations, and it's remarkable to me how people default to just repeating, the talking points. And that is what the pro-choice crowd does. I don't want to make this show, we're talking about Epstein here, but I'm just, for the sake of explaining our society as a whole and how they're going to respond to this. A lot of people are just looking to find Trump's name in here. When this stuff is dumped, believe me, there are going to be people that all they're going to be doing is searching these files for Donald Trump. That's what they're going to be doing. They think that these files, the purpose of these files being released is for them to somehow incriminate or just target Donald Trump. And there's something wrong with that mentality. I think Bill Clinton is a really bad guy. I think Bill Clinton has been involved in some incredibly immoral and sketchy things. Some of these things we know about, some of these things we can speculate about, but I'm not looking for these files to take him down. I'm looking for justice and truth. And there's going to be a race. There's going to be a race here to get this information out the quickest. And when that happens, there are absolutely going to be problems, because when you race to get this information out, you end up moving forward with things that shouldn't be moved forward with. You'll find out that what you first thought was the case is not actually the case at all once there's more context and information or whatever. Once you read other parts of the document or whatever. Reminds me the days of when the Obamacare decision, the Supreme Court's Obamacare ruling. I remember, I'm not going to mention names because I'm not here to put down people, but I remember people who talk about politics, people who have conservative programs who were sitting out, outside the Supreme Court or whatever, broadcasting, and they got the ruling and they started flipping, and it was a race to figure out who was what the decision was. And so there were people that got it wrong, and there's good reasons they got it wrong, because it looks like Justice John Roberts changed his vote along the way. He voted to overrule that the tax that was in there, the way that was worded and everything, but he later changed his vote back to where he found a way for this to be allowed. And it's understandable how they got there, but they got there ultimately because of sloppiness, and sloppiness was the result of rushing. That's why I don't ever break news on here. It is not what we do. I'm not a journalist. I've told you that repeatedly. Some of you refuse to accept that. I'm not a journalist. I'm a guy who has opinions on things that other journalists tell us about. I have questions about the things they tell us about. I'm skeptical about a lot of the things they tell us about, but it's not a race for me to be the first to tell you something. I think it's more important to develop the correct viewpoint on an issue. And some of those things take a little bit of time. They all take longer than the media and the people in politics want you to develop your opinion on something because they want the immediate result. But the truth is, some of this stuff just takes a while to understand. And so when you factor that in, and there's going to be people that rush to get this information out, there are going to be people who, again, I mentioned off the top, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, they don't have the capacity to think for themselves. And I was referencing these people who get into debates with these abortion abolitionists, and they fall back to the talking point. It's remarkable. These abortion abolitionists will be showing a picture of an unborn child, in the womb, and people will say, well, that's her body, her choice. Well, what body am I pointing to? Is this her body? Yeah, that's just a clump of cells. Well, it has an arm and a hand and a nose. Well, it's not sentient yet. It's not aware of its surroundings. It can't feel pain. It's not, they'll say things like the Bible says you're not a person, you're not a human. Life doesn't begin until you draw a first breath. All of this stuff, which is just absolutely incorrect, but it's like you default. I've heard people say in times of crisis, you don't necessarily rise to the occasion, you default to your highest level of training. And it's like this is all the thought that these people have put into this, and so they default back to the talking points. My body, my choice. Why does some, men don't have uteruses, therefore they can't have an opinion on the slaughter of unborn children, which is preposterous, of course, as well. But they just repeat these things as though these things are self-evident, thinking nothing about it, and they don't think about it. There's different reasons why people don't think about it. But you have some people who want things like abortion to be the law of the land because it gives them as bad as it sounds, a free pass for living an immoral lifestyle. Now, I'm not talking about, obviously, people who have been raped and incest, things like that. I'm talking about people who decide to live a promiscuous lifestyle, who don't want the responsibility of having a child because they're too young. It'll interfere with them going to college or making money or living their lives. And so they want to make this sound like it's just like clipping your fingernails or cutting your hair. My body, my choice. If I can get a tattoo, surely I can just remove a clump of cells from my body. And that's how this is talked about. And I am telling you this not to get into that whole issue today, although I think it's one of the most important things that we can talk about in society today. I'm saying that this exact sort of situation is going to be repeated when these Epstein files are released. If Trump's name is in there in any capacity, it's going to be obviously spoken of or framed in a negative way. If Trump was, at an event with Epstein and there was an email about it, you're going to start getting factoids like Trump's name was mentioned 39 times in these documents or whatever it is, right? It's just like when they did the whole, they stopped doing this, by the way, or at least I haven't seen it in a while. They used to say Trump has lied 10,342 times. And then they had kind of a running tally during his first term in office. And the idea was to say, if you said, well, what has Trump lied about? They say, what are you talking about? There's 10,476 lies or whatever number I said. It doesn't matter because no human being can respond to this massive number of allegations. And you say, fine, give me the best examples. And they give you examples. And listen, I'm not here to say Trump's never lied. But a lot of the things they say that are lies are not lies at all. It's actually lies. It's misrepresentations of what Trump actually said. Things like suckers and losers. Things like good people on both sides. Those things, listen, and those are the ones they go to first. Those are their top tier examples, and they are made up. A reasonable person might then conclude, well, maybe this list is not accurate. Maybe this list is a gross distortion of reality, but I don't have the time nor the information, nor the effort to go through this and refute every one of these. That's impossible for someone to do. Reminds me a little bit, a month or so ago on this program, I interviewed an individual. She's running for Congress in Detroit. I think it's the 13th district. Her name's Shelby Campbell. And during our conversation, she mentioned, we were talking about Charlie Kirk. She's the one that said some reprehensible things about Charlie Kirk. She kind of apologized, sort of. She said she was just making a joke and she's a fan of dark humor. Whatever, you can decide for yourself. But the bottom line is, she, during that conversation, she made reference to something and she accused Charlie Kirk of saying somebody in the audience who was Asian. She said that Charlie Kirk used a derogatory term, calling him a CHINK. And at the time, this is the point, like I knew at the time, I knew that, again, I can't say I knew, but I was very confident that Charlie Kirk didn't say that. I was very confident of that, and I thought there has to be other context. Something else is going on here, and I just didn't know it at the time. But after the interview, that day or the next day, soon thereafter, a day or two later, I came to realize that she was referencing a conversation that Charlie Kirk had with Cenk Uygur. And he was talking to Cenk Uygur, and she thought that he was saying, or it was reported that he was using a derogatory term targeting Asians or whatever, but in reality, he was saying Cenk Uygur. It's spelled CENK. So the point is, how can you possibly know if they have examples of 10,000, which of course that's inflated as well, in 10,000 lies, 10,000 whatever it is, 10,000 times Trump's name is going to be in these documents. There's no way to know all of the examples and have a ready at the hand response for all of these things. At some point, though, we have to say, well, let's just give me the best 2, 3, 4, or 5, and let's go through those and see what actually, see what the evidence suggests. This is going to be a clown show. Be prepared. This is going to be an absolute clown show. And again, I'm for transparency, but I also know that there are political opportunists. It's the perfect recipe. You've got political opportunists mixed with people who are, well, low information voters, as Rush used to call them. So you've got people who are going to distort reality and people who are prepared to consume it. And it is a recipe for disaster. So just prepare yourself for this. Again, there's nothing wrong with transparency. In fact, transparency is a good thing. But if you focus just on transparency and then you say, we're going to have the experts tell us what this stuff means, you're going to have chaos. It's going to happen. And I don't know what's going to happen specifically, but I can assure you, whatever they tell us at the beginning, at some point along this process, it's going to be incorrect. It's going to be incorrect. And there are going to be people that are going to believe whatever the initial lie is for the rest of eternity. I don't know who said it, but somebody has once said, the lie, I'm going to paraphrase, but a lie can be spread around the world before the truth even wakes up. That's a very generous paraphrase, but basically, lies spread rapidly. Truth takes time, and it can't catch up. And there are going to be some people who like to live in their ignorance, who don't really care about truth, who won't even be open to the idea that Donald Trump is not some creepy pedophile, as some people are claiming. Some people are claiming. I mean, I've got a school teacher, a public school teacher in my district who makes allegations of that on Facebook. It's wild times. And that is defamation. That is what libel, slander, whatever. This without evidence. If it can't be proven, and you're making these statements as fact, and it can be proven that, of course, he's a public figure, so it's a little bit different. But this is not how you do these things at all. but it's how it's done in politics today. So just buckle up for what we're about ready to partake in here, my friends, with the release of these files. Friends, if you're dealing with discomfort or you're tired of living off prescriptions, tired of managing those side effects, you're not alone. A lot of folks are looking for something natural that they can trust. That's why you should check out Christopher's Organic Botanicals, a family-run natural kratom company rooted in truth, tradition, and transparency. They partner directly with farmers in Indonesia. They lab test everything before it ever reaches your hands. No hype, no synthetic, no funny business. This is just the real thing, done right. And real kratom, and you should, I encourage you to research it. I encourage you to research it on their website or wherever, not just their website, wherever. You can research real kratom and see that the examples of some of the horror stories you might have heard about kratom comes from the synthetic garbage, the shady sellers out there promoting, selling, producing stuff that's not real kratom at all. That's the horror story. Check out their website. You can get their product or you can research there, but you can start with their Kratom Starter Pack. Use coupon code Todd Huff. You'll save 10% during the checkout process. Visit Christopher's Organic Botanicals.com. That's Christopher's Organic Botanicals.com. Truth, tradition, transparency. All right, so getting near the end here of this, our first segment of today's program. Again, it is good to have transparency. In fact, for those of you who have listened to this program recently, you'll know that I've had problems with transparency with one of our state senators who refuses here in Indiana to even explain why he refused to convene the Senate for the special session to consider redistricting that was requested by by Governor Mike Braun. And there's no transparency. They've hidden it from us. It's behind these deals that are made behind closed doors. They've counted the votes for something that we don't even know what it is yet. Apparently, they're just against it. They don't want to go through it. It's not transparent. So I'm a fan of transparency. But being a nation being a people that should be focused on getting transparency from their government, we have an obligation and a responsibility to know what to do with that information. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. So more about this on the other side of the break, my friends. Sit tight. You're listening to Conservative Not Bitter Talk. I'm your host, Todd Huff. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. I want to continue this conversation about the Epstein Files. I also want to I alluded to a soundbite that came from an interview between Jasmine Crockett, representative from the state of Texas, a leftist lunatic in Congress, someone who is there for the political drama. She's a dramacrat in the truest sense of the word, engaging in political theater constantly. This is what politics has become, unfortunately, in 21st century America. I've got a soundbite of her. It's an example of what we're going to see more of. We're going to see more of this as more information is released. And I'm going to set this up here in just a moment, what this conversation was about that she had with Caitlin Collins of CNN. But before I do that, my friends, I need to pause here, remind you, and ask you, are you tired of spending your hard-earned money at businesses that turn around and then support leftist causes? That's exactly why we created Freedom Marketplace. It's a searchable directory of businesses that share your conservative values, businesses that have vowed not to support leftist candidates, leftist causes. It's free for you to use. No strings attached, just good patriotic businesses that are pushing in the same direction you're pushing. You can check it out today at freedommarketplace.net. This is something we built. The full history is as we grew the program and we got enough, we got a significant amount of advertisers. We ran out of space. We used to put those folks on our website, and there got to be enough people, logos and things on the website that it wasn't good. It didn't look good. I wasn't proud of my work. It just got too convoluted. And so we had to build a searchable directory, and that's where this started. And businesses who, not everybody has a listing there, but many do. And there's also people that you don't hear on this program that are also on that directory, and it's free for you to use. We try to find businesses. They sign a pledge, by the way, that says they're not going to support leftist candidates or leftist causes. So freedommarketplace.net is where you would go for that. You can find out information about it on our website, toddhuffshow.com as well, wherever you want to go, however you want to get there. But this is a place where you can find businesses that you can work with that are pushing in the same direction that you are. freedommarketplace.net. Okay. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of a voice problem here today. I told Oz it's come out of the blue. I know the fall and winter time, this hits me every year. And I thought I dodged the bullet because it normally hits late September into October. And it'll take my vocals down. And I'm fighting it today. And I don't feel bad. I don't know if I sound different to you, but I can tell you I sound different to myself. And I can feel it, and I just can't quite get my voice to where it needs to be. So if you hear me hitting that mute button, that's I'm trying to keep my voice from bogging down. So that being said, let's play. Let me set the scene first. Jasmine Crockett comes on to talk with Caitlin Collins on CNN. Now, Jasmine Crockett took to the floor of the House of Representatives, her and her team, to prove a point, I guess. Did a search in the FEC database, FEC Federal Elections Commission database, to see who had received funding from Jeffrey Epstein. And again, because this is everything's political, right? Everything is, listen, I understand. If you take money from Jeffrey Epstein, you might be someone who's part of the problem. He might, in theory, if all these allegations are true, we can connect the dots and say, wow, that person is being controlled by Jeffrey Epstein. Or if you really want to dig deep, is Jeffrey Epstein an asset to somebody who's being controlled by another foreign country or what? It's a problem, right? If you've got someone who has been involved with Jeffrey Epstein and what he was doing on his little private island, that debauchery and wickedness and pure evil and sin, if you were involved in that and he has audio, video evidence that can put you there in some really compromising positions, then suddenly you're very blackmailable. You're someone who's corrupted. You've been compromised. And if you're in office and you want to stay in office, like you depend upon Jeffrey Epstein to keep you there, you're going to follow, toe the line with how he wants you to vote or the people who have used him as an asset. This is a potential explanation for this whole. This is a potential of what could actually have been going on at Epstein Island. Just a potential. It doesn't mean it's the only explanation, but it's certainly an explanation as to what could have been going on. So if that's the case, obviously, if you're taking money from Epstein, if you're, spending a lot of time with him, it raises a lot of these questions, and they're absolutely 100%. They are absolutely legitimate questions. Now, that being said, it's also possible in the world of politics, you're out raising money, and, Jeffrey Epstein was wealthy. Jeffrey Epstein, probably like many other people with large amounts of wealth, gives to lots of politicians. It's theoretically possible that Jeffrey Epstein gave money to people that didn't know anything about what Jeffrey Epstein was up to. I can leave it up to you. I'm just saying that, that there's context matters. Just because you have a picture with the guy that might be in these files, just because he emailed you and responded, doesn't mean that you are on the list, so to speak. It could mean that. It absolutely could mean that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. I feel like we've lost this ability to have this conversation about context and nuance along the way. But nonetheless, what Jasmine Crockett did, she went and did a search in the FEC database where she found the name Jeffrey Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein as a donor for people like Mitt Romney and Lee Zeldin and others. However, we have since found out that there's not just one Jeffrey Epstein in the world. Have you paused and thought about this? I can tell you this as somebody, I used to, a long time ago, I had toddhuff.com. And I'm talking 20 some years ago. And it expired or something. I didn't know I didn't have it on auto renew or something happened. And I lost it, and somebody else who's a politician in, I think, Baltimore got it. So I don't have that anymore. Wish that I did. I don't. It's fine. But we're the only, many of us are not the only person with our name. I would say most of us, it's probably rare for someone to only be the only example of a name. So just imagine being a person named Jeffrey Epstein. Again, this makes me think of a Seinfeld. When Elaine was dating a guy with the name of a serial killer, she went to a New York Giants football game with him, and they announced the guy's name over the PA system. And of course, he gets up to go respond to whatever the PA addresser was requesting him for. And Elaine's telling everybody he's not a serial killer. He's a nice guy, right? I mean, as only Seinfeld can do. But just imagine being another Jeffrey Epstein. Well, Jeffrey Epstein gave money to the campaigns of other Republicans. Jasmine Crockett found it, but it wasn't the Jeffrey Epstein of Epstein Island. It was another Jeffrey Epstein. And I just want you to listen to this exchange. I play it simply to say, prepare for more of this as these files are released.
From a Jeffrey Epstein, here's what you said.
There's a pause in the broadcast.
Who also took money from somebody named Jeffrey Epstein, as I had my team dig in very quickly. Mitt Romney, the NRCC, Lee Zeldin, George Bush, Win Red, McCain Palin, Rick Lazio.
You mentioned Lee Zeldin there. He's now a cabinet secretary. He responded and said it was actually Dr. Jeffrey Epstein, who's a doctor that doesn't have any relation to the convicted sex trafficker. Unfortunate for that doctor, but that is who donated to a prior campaign of his. Do you want to correct the record on the people that you
I
want to pause that real quick. So in other words, Jasmine Crockett, she had her team do a quick search, find people who took money from Jeffrey Epstein. They found the Republican Party, Sarah Palin, McCain Palin campaign, Lee Zeldin, Mitt Romney, but it's not the same guy. And Lee Zeldin says it's a different guy. It's a doctor, an eye doctor or some such thing. And I want you to listen to her response here.
That it was that Jeffrey Epstein, just so that people understand when you make a donation, your picture is not there. And because they decided to spring this on us in real time, I wanted the Republicans to think about what could potentially happen, because I knew that they didn't even try to go through the FEC. So my team, what they did is they Googled. And that is specifically why I said a Jeffrey Epstein. Unlike Republicans, I at least don't go out and just tell lies.
Really?
Because it was not the same one, that's fine. But when Lee Zeldin had something to say, all he had to say was it was a different Jeffrey Epstein. He admitted that he did receive donations from a Jeffrey Epstein, so at least I wasn't trying to mislead people. Now, have I dug in to find out who this doctor is? I have not. So I will trust and take what he says, is that it wasn't that Jeffrey Epstein, but I was not attempting to mislead anybody.
Then why bring it up?
I literally had maybe 20 minutes before I had to do that debate.
So why bring it up?
People like to then say, well, you're trying to make it sound like he took money from
I did not know.
A registered sex offender.
No, but I literally did not know. When you search FEC files, and that's what I had my team to do, I texted them and I said, listen, we're going up. They are saying that she took donations.
Right, but someone might say, well, your team should have done the homework to make sure it wasn't the convicted sex trafficker.
Within 20 minutes, you could not find that out, not from just doing a quick search on FEC. So, number one, I made sure.
I got to take a break, my friends. Quick time out. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Sorry for jumping off so quickly there. I looked at the clock and realized I had not accounted for the time I had available. I didn't have any time left there, and I had to jump off quickly. So basically, Jasmine Crockett was trying to make some point. I only play this. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what goes on in our Congress sometimes, because of Dramocrats like this, and sometimes because of Republicans too. But it's ridiculous what goes on there. It's not serious business many times. They're looking for sound bites to send out to their donors to get, to do fundraising, to show people that they're down for the cause. They just want their, a video of themselves from the floor of the House talking about whatever it is that they want to talk about in their latest newsletter or podcast or whatever. And rushing it and doing it this way, what she did was ended up finding out that the hard way that the Jeffrey Epstein they found as a donor for McCain Palin, for the Republican Party, for Lee Zeldin, for Mitt Romney, it wasn't this Jeffrey Epstein. Now she says, look, I'm trying to say, point out that just because someone's name's there, it's not necessarily, there's other context. She's saying that she's doing the responsible thing here. But in reality, what she's doing is just feeding the narrative and feeding the people who are low information voters, feeding them stuff that sounds like at first glance, or at first hearing anyway, that what is being, that Republicans are taking money from Epstein. That's what she wanted the point to be. And there are people who are never going to be convinced otherwise. They heard that clip. They don't care about context. They're going to tell you, maybe today at work, that Mitt Romney's campaign took money from Jeffrey Epstein, or that they won't know Lee Zeldin. McCain Palin, that's too far back for a lot of people, so they won't mention that. They might mention Mitt Romney. If Trump's name is somehow pulled up onto this, into this mess, they absolutely would remember that. But when read, a Republican group, the Republican Party, they took money. I'm sure someone out there today is going to say Jeffrey Epstein was given to the Republicans because, of course, they're all, according to these people that exchange in this sort of conversation and so forth, they're going to say that these folks are all engaged in pedophilia, which is sick and disgusting. But that's where this goes. And I bring this up to say we're going to see this multiplied by a pretty big factor over the next 30 days. People are going to claim that something in the Epstein files means something it doesn't mean. And I'm going to say up front to make sure that you withhold making a final judgment. Make sure you withhold making a final judgment. Obviously, if it's real incriminating and very straightforward, it's. I'm not saying there's not degrees of this, but if it's someone who you suspect is doing some nefarious things, a Democrat named Bill Clinton, for example, we should just be a little bit slow to confirm these things. And what's so wrong about that? I don't want people to be unjustly accused, even if I disagree with them politically. I feel like a member of a shrinking minority when I say that. Everything is so political these days. And so we're about to see a whole lot more of this over the course of the next 30 days. And of course, even after that. Friends, one of the biggest challenges that we have as conservatives is finding ways to ensure our values align with the things that we do, the way that we live our lives, including how we invest and what we invest in. That's why I like to see what the team at 48 Financial is doing. They specialize in biblically responsible investing. That means they screen out companies that do not align with your faith and your values so that we're not funding things that go completely against what we believe in. This is critically important. This has not always been possible. It is possible with some of these tools today, and that's what 48 Financial is trying to help you do. They'll do that heavy lifting for you, helping align your investments with your purpose, with your goals, with your values. The best part is you can simply start by where you are today. You can do a quick assessment at 48financial.com/Todd. That's 48financial.com/Todd. And they are going to help you determine to what degree or if your current investments align with or reflect your values. Again, that's 48financial.com/Todd. 48 Financial, because your money should be working for your values, my friends. All right. Reached the end of the program today. I just want to reiterate what I said here a moment ago. There is absolutely going to be a bunch of hysteria. Transparency works. Transparency is important, but it only works when we stay rooted in truth, when we think for ourselves, when we don't just accept whatever is told us because it fits the political narrative or even our political preferences. What matters is that we are critical thinkers who question what we're told and who look for context, and nuance. We've got to resist this circus. It's about to unfold, and we've got to demand honesty over the hysteria and the hype and the headlines. So, folks, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful day. See you tomorrow. SDG.